Imagine breaking into a creepy, snow-covered Scottish castle in the dead of winter, searching for priceless antiques, only to turn around and realize someone is raising a heavy bronze candlestick right behind your head. Sounds like the climax of a horror movie, right? But for one rogue antique hunter, this terrifying moment is just the beginning of a twisted web of forged art, stolen identities, and cold-blooded murder. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into a cinematic mystery that proves the glittering world of high-end antiques has an underbelly darker than a castle dungeon. Grab your popcorn, lock your doors, and let's get into it. Our story centers around Freya Lockwood, a brilliant antique hunter who runs the Lockwood Antique Hunters Agency out of a sleepy English village in Suffolk. Freya isn't your typical detective. She's an expert at spotting the tiny inconsistencies in a brushstroke that prove a masterpiece is actually a fake. She runs the agency with her fiercely loyal, eccentric, and utterly fabulous Aunt Carol, a woman who considers bright red lipstick and a faux fur leopard print coat to be standard investigative gear. Backing them up is Skye, their tech-savvy hacker assistant who can dig up anyone's digital skeletons, and Phil, a brooding, handsome FBI art crime team agent who prefers playing by the rules. But the catalyst of our story is Bella, a gorgeous, fiercely independent lone wolf investigator and master of disguise who doesn't trust anyone. Bella plays by her own rules, and this time those rules have landed her right in the crosshairs of a killer. The inciting incident revolves around Arthur Crockleford, Freya's late mentor. Before he was murdered, Arthur operated as an informant in the criminal underworld of antiques, and he left Freya a series of secret journals detailing unsolved crimes and black market treasures. Recently, 3 supposedly authentic paintings by the famous Scottish portrait artist Sir Henry Raeburn were sold in Boston, only to be identified by the FBI as brilliant forgeries. These exact paintings were listed in Arthur's 3rd journal. Eager to prove herself and uncover secrets about her own estranged family, Bella decides to go rogue. Without telling Freya or Phil, she disguises herself as an elderly auctioneer named Emma Page and travels to the forbidding, isolated Fawside Castle in the Scottish borders. She believes the castle's owner, the intimidating Laird Ewan McGovern, is hiding the answers. Our movie opens with Bella standing outside Fawside Castle during a brutal, howling blizzard. The castle is completely dark. Finding the back door unlocked, she creeps inside, discovering a study filled with rare Scottish silver. But as she turns to leave, the floorboards creak. She catches a glimpse in an ornate gilt mirror of a figure raising a candlestick to strike her down. Everything goes black. Miles away in Suffolk, Freya and Aunt Carol realize Bella has gone completely off the grid. They know Bella's last known location, so they throw their bags into Carol's vintage Mercedes and drive straight into the eye of the Scottish storm. When they arrive at the snow-blanketed Fawside Castle the next morning, the place is eerily quiet. While poking around the kitchen garden, Freya notices strange, indented footprints in the snow, leading to an overturned wheelbarrow. She follows the trail and stops dead in her tracks. Emerging from a frozen mound of snow are bluish, frostbitten fingers. But it's not Bella. The dead man in the snow is Ewan McGovern, the Laird of the castle. He's been struck over the head and a pool of frozen blood stains the ice beneath him. Inside the castle, the priceless Scottish silver Bella had spotted the night before is completely gone. The local police, led by a scruffy but sharp detective named Rogers, immediately suspect this was a robbery gone wrong. Ewan's much younger, glamorous girlfriend, Jane, plays the part of the grieving widow perfectly, though Carol immediately pegs her tears as fake. Meanwhile, Ewan's daughter, a quiet music student named India, doesn't even try to hide her hatred for her father. Also hovering around the castle is Dolores, the elderly housekeeper, and her grandson Oliver, the heavily tattooed local bartender who happens to be secretly dating India. With Phil arriving from the US to help, the team realizes they have a massive problem. Bella's face was caught on the castle's security cameras right before the murder. The police think Bella killed Ewan, stole the silver, and went on the run. Freya knows her friend is innocent, but to prove it, they have to solve the murder themselves. The investigation pulls the team into the murky depths of the art underworld. Skye, hacking into prison records from the safety of her laptop, discovers that Bella had recently tracked down an elderly inmate in Edinburgh named Cedric James. Cedric was locked up years ago for a fatal car crash, but his true profession, a master art forger. Freya and Phil visit Cedric in his sterile prison meeting room. The elderly man is sharp and defiant, admitting nothing, but he lets slip a crucial detail. He has two estranged sons who are bad news. It becomes obvious that Cedric is the artistic genius behind the forged Rayburn paintings sent to Boston. The stakes skyrocket when the team targets Alexandra Pattern, a snobby auctioneer who is secretly working with Ewan to traffic the forged art to America. But before they can interrogate her properly, Alexandra collapses at a charity dance. She dies in the hospital. The cause of death? Death cap mushrooms, a slow-acting, highly lethal poison. The police theorize that Ewan and Alexandra had a falling out over their illegal enterprise. They assume Ewan poisoned Alexandra, and in retaliation, she bludgeoned him with the candlestick, stole the silver, and died days later. But Freya's gut tells her that's too perfectly packaged. Bella finally resurfaces, hiding out in her old apartment in Leith. She explains she was knocked unconscious in the castle and fled in terror, realizing the forgery ring was much bigger and more dangerous than she thought. Reunited, the team breaks back into Fawside Castle under the cover of a second violent blizzard. Sneaking into the dusty, cobweb-filled attic, they uncover the motherlode. Dozens of flawless, forged Victorian paintings waiting to be shipped, alongside stacks of fake auction catalogs used to invent their history. As the storm rages outside, the castle's lights flicker and die. Freya and Phil descend into the castle's damp, pitch-black wine cellar, searching for clues. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door slams shut behind them. The lock turns. They are trapped in the dark with a killer roaming the halls above them. Using brute force and a bit of ingenuity, Phil kicks open a hidden coal chute door, and he and Freya escape the cellar into the freezing snow. While climbing out, Freya spots a duffel bag stuffed into a crevice in the brick wall. Inside is the missing Scottish silver. The robbery was entirely staged to misdirect the police. They rush to the back door of the castle, only to stumble upon a horrifying sight. Lying on the cold flagstones of the boot room, bleeding from a fresh blow to the head, is Cedric James. The master forger had just been released from prison and came straight to his castle, only to be murdered the moment he walked through the door. The murder weapon, a dented pewter candlestick, lies abandoned in the corner. Freya's mind races, putting the final puzzle pieces together. Armed with a dusty family Bible she found in the study, she gathers all the surviving guests and suspects in the drawing room. With Phil standing guard at the door, his hand resting near his holster, Freya lays out the shocking truth. The dead man in the snow wasn't Ewan McGovern. Years ago, Cedric James owned this castle and ran his forgery empire with his two sons, Christopher and Ewan. But Christopher died in a car crash fleeing the police. The real Ewan McGovern hated his criminal father and fled to New Zealand to start a new life. Desperate to keep the castle and the illegal business running, Cedric hired a man named Steve Grove to impersonate Ewan. Steve, the fake Ewan, played his part well, but he had got greedy. He teamed up with the auctioneer Alexandra to sell the forgeries and keep the massive profits for themselves. But someone in the castle knew the truth. Freya turns her piercing gaze to the sweet elderly housekeeper, Dolores. Dolores wasn't just a maid, she was Cedric's ex-wife, the mother of the real Ewan and the deceased Christopher. And that made her the grandmother of Oliver, the tattooed bartender. Dolores had figured out that the man sleeping in her family's castle was a fraud who was stealing her grandchildren's inheritance, so she took matters into her own hands. Using her culinary skills, she slipped death-cap mushrooms into the imposter Steve and Alexandra's food. When Steve didn't die fast enough, Oliver snuck up behind him in the snowstorm and bludgeoned him with a candlestick. They staged the silver robbery to throw off the cops. And when Cedric finally got out of prison and showed up at the door, Oliver murdered him too, ensuring that the inheritance would pass directly to the real Ewan in New Zealand. And ultimately, to Oliver. The room erupts into chaos, but Phil's authoritative presence shuts it down. The police arrive to cart Dolores and Oliver away. In the aftermath, Bella realizes the family she was desperately searching for was full of murderers and thieves. But as Freya, Carol, and Skye rally around her, Bella realizes she isn't alone anymore. She has finally found her true family, a found family of brilliant, eccentric antique hunters. The agency returns to Suffolk, ready for their next global adventure. So I have to ask you guys, if you found out your entire family inheritance was being stolen by an imposter, how far would you go to take it back? Would you call the cops, or would you take the law into your own hands like Dolores and Oliver did? Let me know your wildest theories and thoughts down in the comments below.